Hello, everyone, and welcome to BodyBags. I'll be your reviewer for today. I'm Lonnie from Tats, and yeah, everything is kind of coming full circle for me because, if you notice, usually I'm the Saturday reviewer on BodyBags, but we decided that I'm going to go back to being the Friday reviewer, which, funny enough, is when I first started on BodyBags, I started off as the Friday night reviewer, and then I took some time off, and then I came back, and I was doing Saturdays for a while and we decided I'm going to go back to being the Friday reviewer. So, the circle of life, everything comes full circle. So anyway, so yeah, I'm back on being the Friday reviewer again, and tonight I'm wearing my special shirt. This is gonna, you already know what movie I'm reviewing by the title, but I just figured, special occasion. I'm going back to Fridays and. We're talking about horror movies from the 1980s, so I figure I better bust out my shirt for this one. And as you can see there, it is. There we go. Harry Swanson's my name, and excitement's my game. So, whoa, almost lost it there. All right. So that will pretty much. Sorry. So that will pretty much tell you what movie I'm reviewing today. This is from 1986. I know that this isn't exactly straight up horror, but it definitely has horror elements to it, and but also too, there's Chinese folklore, Chinese ghost stories, things like this, um, Chinese legends, things like this in there, and also too, it's directed by the main man himself, John Carpenter. You already know what movie I'm talking about. We're talking about Big Trouble in Little China. And this movie is awesome. I cannot recommend this movie enough. Definitely a movie when it first came out, it really did not hit. It wasn't that it's a bad film. It's definitely not a bad film at all by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's just the problem with this movie was it was just way too ahead of its time. And over time, it's definitely gained a following and now people like myself think it's absolutely brilliant. And, but I think at the time this movie was just a little too ambitious with what it was trying to do. And, but like I said, now I think, people have, it's grown on people and people understand it now and, become more accustomed to it and stuff like this. But, yeah, so anyway, the story is about our main hero is Jack Burton, played by Kurt Russell, once again teaming with Carpenter in an amazing performance. Kurt Russell is so much fun in this movie. Like, oh my gosh. And so he plays Jack Burton. He's a truck driver. He's driving a truck called the Pork Chop Express. So he goes into Little China. He's, having some fun. He's, doing some gambling, playing games with his friends. And one of the friends that he is gambling against is his buddy Wang Chi, played by Dennis Dunn, who from Prince of Darkness. And it turns out that Jack ends up cleaning him out of his money, and Wang is like very very upset about this, and so he's like, no, I need my money, man. You can't take my money and all this kind of stuff. It's like double or nothing, and all this. And so they do a bet, and Wang Chi loses and stuff, and so he's like, well, I got to go to the airport, and so Jack is like, well, I'm gonna drive you. He's like, because I want my money and all this stuff. So on their way to the airport, Wang is explaining about how he was really, really stupid, spending all night gambling and giving away his money and all this other kind of stuff. When really he should have been getting his sleep and all this kind of stuff. He's talking about like today's big day for him because he's going to the airport to pick up his, I guess, betrothed, or I guess you could call her a fiance of sorts. I guess Miao Yin. And he said, and he talks the story about, how he came to America. He like didn't have a penny, worked his way up, saved every penny he could because he wanted to bring her to America so that they could get married and have a good life. And essentially, is setting up what you do come to realize in this movie is you start off thinking. I mean, the movie kind of shows that like Jack is like the main character and like Wang is kind of like his sidekick, but what you really start to realize as the movie goes on, it's really the opposite. Jack is much more of a sidekick to Wang. Wang is the one with the most developed story. I mean, Jack is kind of has that kind of like mythic kind of man with no name kind of a element to him. He kind of rides into town, tries to help right some wrongs, and then moves on. That kind of a thing. So he has that kind of mythic, kind of almost cowboy thing going about him. But Wang is very much, he's very much the lead in this story, and there are definitely moments where Jack definitely feels he's more the sidekick, and Wang is much more the main character. So anyway, they get to the airport, and Jack meets Kim. Where is she at here? Yeah, right there. Kim Cattrall's character, Gracie Law, and he's trying to hit on her, but just when it turns out Gracie Law is there to pick up one Chinese girl, and Wang is there to pick up Miao Yin, and both of the girls, get taken, and Wang and Jack are trying to find Miao Yin. They're chasing this car that has her. These gang members. They take her down into Little China, and so when they get there, they encounter rival gangs, and then they encounter the three storms. These three supernatural. One is lightning, one is rain, and one is thunder. And then we meet the villain of the story, David Lopan, played by James Wong, who this guy's been in so many movies and television. Um, and it turns out that Lopan is actually this supernatural being who is trying to, he's been stuck, I guess, kind of like in the spirit world for a long time. He wants to return into a human form. And to do that, he has to marry a Chinese girl with green eyes, which would be Mao Yin. And he wants to basically sacrifice her so that he can have life. And so they take her, and so Jack and Wang both realize they're kind of in over their heads. So they go to Egg Shen, who is played by Victor Wong, who you remember from Prince of Darkness and Tremors, and he's so fantastic. He was such a great character actor. He really was. It's like, oh man, the guy brought life to pretty much every role he ever played. He was so great. And also too, a friend of theirs named Eddie. So, and then Gracie Law, Kim Cattrall's character, she comes in, and then they realize, like, they gotta try to go into the underworld of Little China to try to get Miao Yin out. And so, you get to the famous scene where, they go to this brothel where they think she's being held. And so Kurt Russell decides to go undercover, which, Harry Swanson and all this. But the three storms arrive, and they take Miao Yin, and so now it becomes basically, I know I'm being kind of very convoluted about this, but basically it's up to Wang and Jack to try to get into the underworld of Little China, and then when they realize they're dealing with monsters and ghosts and supernatural forces, they realize, things beyond their control. Then they need to bring in Egg Shen, because Egg Shen is, he's pretty much, like a kind of like an old mystic, an old sorcerer, I guess you could call him, and stuff. And so he brings them to give them the tools and the guidance that they need to help, defeat Lopan and to save Miao Yin. And at one point, Gracie Law, the thing is Gracie Law, Kim Cattrall's character, she's very strong, she's very forthright, she's very much, she's not a weak character or anything like that. But there does come a point in the movie where her character gets hijacked too, and so the guys have to try to rescue the girls and save the day, and defeat the monsters and the ghosts, and I'll just leave it at that. This movie is amazing for so many reasons. You got this movie, you got everything you could possibly want in a movie. It's all there, man. You got action, you got comedy, you got romance, you got great special effects. Okay, granted, some of it didn't hold up over the years, but still, of course, Carpenter delivers another masterful music score. The performances, Dennis Dunn, Victor Wong, Kim Cattrall, James Hong, like, oh man, I mean, they're like, in this movie, you watch this movie, is like, what's not to like? You got martial arts, you got it, everything you could possibly ever want in a movie. The one thing I will say about this movie, I think one of the things that kind of made a little bit of ahead of its time, and I think one of the things that people weren't really expecting about this movie was that when it first came out, you gotta remember, this is 1986, so we're right in the middle of the big, like action movie super guys. I mean, you got, here comes Stallone with Rocky and Rambo movies. You got Schwarzenegger with Conan and Terminator, and you got, I think it's a year or two later. Here comes Mel. Well, you already got Mel Gibson with Mad Max, but I think a year or two later, here he comes with Lethal Weapon and all this kind of stuff. Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, Star Wars. So you're in the middle of like the big, kind of like macho man kind of action movie, big genre of films. And even Kurt Russell had done some action films, at this point. He had done like Tango and Cash with Stallone and obviously Escape from New York, things like that. So, Kurt Russell himself was no stranger to action films. But the thing is what Kurt Russell does is he comes in and he basically does a parody of those kind of characters. You have the big macho man who, the Clint Eastwood types and all that kind of stuff. He's playing that type, but he's also doing kind of a spoof of the character and it works. It definitely works in the context of this story because what ends up happening is you got Jack Burton he's very much a fish out of water. He's getting into a situation he knows nothing about, and why would he know anything about this? He's going into this realm of Chinese tradition, Chinese legends and folklore and Chinese ghost stories and everything. What would this guy know about that kind of stuff? And the thing is nothing. And it is kind of fun too to watch this guy who he talks a good game. He's a blowhard. He's you got him doing basically like a John Wayne inflection kind of, I'm such a badass, I can take everybody on myself and all this kind of stuff. But the thing is, in reality, he's a normal guy, and when it comes to the fighting, a lot of the times he can't do squat because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's never really been in this situation before. At one point, like he's trying to fire a gun and everything, and the gun's not going off. He's like, "What's going on here?" and all this. And Eddie has to point to him, is like pointing out to him, "Dude, you need to take the safety off." So, oh, and everything else. So he's so in over his head, and that's what makes it great. Is, like that would be the problem I would see. Like, oh God, this is so depressing to think about. But it's like, okay, Disney and Fox own the rights to this movie, which means they could do a remake of it if they want to. Which, at one point I heard that there was talk that The Rock was actually interested in doing a remake of this movie. I wish that they would please do not do a remake of this movie, because what will end up happening, I guarantee it, the entire point of the movie will be lost. Everything that makes this movie great, the people who do the remake will obviously not get it. And I mean, because we see that a lot, especially like nowadays, especially like what they're doing with a lot of these, these female girl boss kind of characters that they keep trying to do with these action movies. The people who go and make these modern movies now, chances are very likely they've never watched any of these 80s action movies before. They've never watched Stallone movies or Kurt Russell movies or, Harrison Ford or, Schwarzenegger or, Chuck Norris. They probably have never watched any of those movies, but they got this idea in their head. And that was always kind of the idea that was played, was like, when these guys did these movies, they were always invincible. Nothing was a challenge. Nothing was an obstacle. You try to shoot Stallone with bullets, he's so tough, like the bullets would just bounce off him. They got that idea that that's how those movies were done. And so, like, that's what they're trying to do with these movies now. And that's why they don't work. They try to apply this to these female heroes and stuff like that, and they don't work. And it's like, the reason it's not realistic. And the thing is like, you have this idea that that's how those movies were done. Go back to the 1980s, watch Die Hard. Bruce Willis is damn near dead at the end of the movie. He's almost dead. He gets shot. His feet are cut to pieces. He's losing blood by the gallons and all this kind of stuff. He doesn't even take out the last bad guy. Look at the Rambo movies. Stallone incurs a lot of damage in those movies. Stallone gets hurt bad. Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, he gets his butt handed to him so many times in those movies, and all this kind of stuff. And Mel Gibson, as Riggs in the Lethal Weapon movies and all this kind of stuff. Like, these guys were not invincible. These guys did have to endure pain and suffering. They didn't, hell, Mel Gibson gets shot at the end of Lethal Weapon 2, and Danny Glover is the one who ends up taking out the big bad guy and all that stuff, you know? And it's like, but that's the problem. And that's how they would end up doing it. I could see how, you could already see how, like, Disney will probably turn around and do this movie. They will turn around and be like, okay, so, well, we're going to take the character of Jack Burton, obviously. We're going to switch it out with a woman of color, and now the character will be Jackie Burton. And so, probably the Gracie Law character will now probably be a black woman, and they'll be gay and all this other kind of stuff. And we'll take out the whole, like Chinese ghost story element. We'll take all this and we'll make it all about like the sex trade and white people, profiting off of, selling, Asian girls and all that. That's what they would do with it. The humor would be gone, and they would try to turn it into the most political piece of crap you've ever seen. Like, and it would just be unwatchable. It would be boring. It would just be the same crap that we've had shoveled out for almost the last 10 years. It would just be the same thing. And it's like, that's why I'm saying, just leave this alone. Leave it be its own movie. Just give it a nice 4K release. Scream Factory, somebody, I don't care. Arrow, give this a nice, 4K release and just leave it be. Don't remake it. Don't try to reboot it. Don't try to do the female version of it and all that kind of stuff. Just leave it alone, and just, kind of let it be its own thing, and that let it be unique and everything. Well, that's the thing, even if they did reboot it, like I said, it'd be the same thing as the same thing Hollywood's been churning out for like almost the last 10 years. So at least that would be one thing. At least this movie will still be impressive and it'll be unique and it will be its own thing. But still, just this movie, I cannot recommend it enough. I mean, to see, like I said, to actually see a macho, guy like Kurt Russell, who had done his share of action movies, to actually spoof his roles and just, to have fun with it and everything else. And, to see a guy who is willing to take a back seat to a person of color, and to have this guy, like, he's not, he doesn't have all the answers. He doesn't fix everything and all that. Like, that would be the problem. If you turn around, like, that's why I say if they did a remake, yeah, she'd be Jackie Burton and she would probably be Asian. So that way she knows everything. She can do everything. No obstacles. Nothing is a challenge. All that kind of stuff. Like, that's probably how they would do it. Like, and, but I mean, that's what's great about this movie is, like Kurt Russell, he played it as if this was ever any kind of a realistic situation, this is probably about as close to realism as you would get. So, but anyway, yeah. I'm sorry, I know I went off on a long tangent there, but I mean, just come on. We already know how Hollywood operates. If they did try to remake this, we know what they would do. But anyway, so yeah, just Big Trouble in Little China. This movie, it's amazing. Like I said, you got everything you want in a movie. Like I said, it's not full on horror, but you definitely have some horror elements to it. And, and also too, you watch the behind the scenes features and stuff like this. That's the thing. You want to talk about representation. Carpenter and the screenwriters and everyone really wanted to try to honor the Chinese culture as much as humanly possible, and to try to honor Chinese folklore and Chinese ghost stories and things like this. So it's like, there you go. You want your representation, you freaking got it. So here you go. It's all in here in this great little movie. So yeah, check this boy out. Definitely one of John Carpenter's best, one of his most underrated movies. I can't recommend it enough. So that's it. So if anybody took the time to watch all of this, which I'm sorry, I know that my videos always run long, but if you took the time to watch all of this, I thank you for doing it, and I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, could you please leave it a like? If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to the BodyBags channel. And now, different reviewers, one for every day of the week. Well, we're talking about what we're going to do as far as like Saturday and Sunday go, but anyway, so but yeah, I'm now back to being the Friday reviewer, and good to be back. So that's it, everybody. Take care. Have a good night. I'll see you all later. Bye.